Good evening, everyone. We'll start the meeting if we're all ready. Deputy President. Okay. We'll begin by acknowledging the continuing connection of Aboriginal people to country, culture and community, including traditional custodians of this land, the Wadandi and Kanyang people of the Noongar Nation, paying respects to elders past and present. I'll declare this meeting open at 5:01 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and digitally recorded in accordance with Council Policy EM CP2. Members of the public are reminded that no other visual or audio recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed without the permission of the chairperson. While every endeavour is being made to only record those who are actively participating in the meeting, loud comments or noises may be picked up in the live stream. Attending tonight, councillors are Deputy President Lisa Glover, Councillor John Bailey, Councillor Alexis Davey, Councillor Anne Mitchell, Councillor Peter Gubler, Councillor Grant Patrick, Councillor Anita Lindeman and Councillor Deanna Shand. Staff present tonight to my left is Gary Hunt, Chief Executive Officer, Temporary. Director of Operations, Ross Marshall, to my far right. Acting Director, Finance and Corporate, Tim Clinch, to my immediate right. Lauren Clifford, Manager of Corporate Services, to my left. And Samantha Farquhar, Administration Officer, Corporate Services, to my far left. Staff attending in the public gallery are Belinda Richards, Manager of Finance. Michelle Dennis, Manager of Development Services. I'd like to welcome everyone in the public gallery tonight. You're more than welcome. And also those who are participating via the live stream. Item 2.1, apologies, we have none tonight. Item 2.2, approve leave of absence, there are none for tonight. Item 2.3, applications for leave of absence. Do councillors have any applications?
Yes, so thanks. I'd previously requested leave of absence for next month. I think both the agenda briefing and the council meeting I'll be absent.
Thank you to Councillor Patrick.
Oh, it's just not listed.
Yeah, it's already done. It's just not listed. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Item 3, announcements from the presiding member. I don't have any tonight. Item 4, declarations of interest. Division 6, Subdivision 1 of the Local Government Act 1995 states that care should be taken by all councillors to ensure that a financial impartiality interest is declared and that they refrain from voting on any matter which is considered to come in within the ambit of the Act. At tonight's meeting, the CEO, Gary Hunt, has declared an impartiality interest regarding item 9.1.1 as the applicant is known to him from his role as CEO at the City of Perth. He left that role in March 2002. Councillor Gubler has declared a financial interest regarding item 9.2.5 due to NK and PG Gubler multiple land locations. Councillor Mitchell has declared an impartiality interest regarding item 9.2.5 as she is related to Mr. Fry. Moving into public question time. At item 5.1, we have responses to previous public questions that were taken on notice, and we have none. Item 5.2, we have some questions here that have been listed and responded to. These will be captured in the minutes of the meeting, and questions that have been received later have been distributed to the gallery. that will also be included in the minutes of the meeting. Are there any questions from the gallery? Dr. van der Velden?
Yep, thank you. It relates to item 924, as you can imagine. I might be asking prematurely because I don't know what you guys are going to discuss at item 924, but I suppose I just need some reassurance. Specifically, I was wondering, will the business plan focus on sale to myself, or will the business plan include sale to others? And does the business plan encompass the social aspects, not only the financial aspects, but also the social aspects of our community's needs and existing resources? That's my first question. Second question, or shall I wait for the first question?
We can take them one at a time if you like. That would be
Yeah.
okay. All right. CEO Hunt, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Madam President. In response to the question, the business plan needs to take to account more than just the existing lessee, which is yourself, and the business plan will take to account matters outside of just the pure financial interests of the particular proposal.
Yep, thank you. When can I expect to hear the Shire's expectations regarding the sale of 41 Bentley Street specifically? When do I know if you're prepared to sell it to me, and so at what price? Because I need to plan for my future as well.
Thank you. CEO Hunt, would you?
This isn't going to sound right, but I wish I could tell you. But as you and I have had a number of conversations, it's taken us some months when this first issue was raised, I think in February of this year, to get to the position we are now. So I can't tell you how quickly this might go. As you know, I've met you on a number of occasions to try and keep you abreast of where we're up to. So whoever follows me will be briefed on the need to continue the communication with you on the status of the project.
Is there any idea how long the business plan drawing will take?
That shouldn't take more than a couple of months.
Yeah, and what would follow after that?
The questions need to come through the chair, Vitska, but I'll pass that on to CEO Hunt. Thank you.
Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
What happens after the business plan is developed?
Then it's a matter for the council to determine what action, if any, it's going to take in relation to the proposal.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Dr. van der Velden. Are there any more questions from the floor? I think Mrs. Wallace.
My question is, with the gravel extraction application, does the approval and the licence transfer to any new landowners should the land be sold?
Thank you, Mrs. Wallace. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. If I may, the answer to that question is yes, it will be transferable.
Mm-hmm. And I have
Thank
another
you,
question.
Director of
Can
Operations.
I have
Yes.
another question.
Yes.
Yep. How will any complaints be resolved and outcomes communicated to the complainant, and of what time frame? If there's any.
Would you mind, Mrs. Wallace, just repeating that for me?
Yep. How will any complaints be resolved and outcomes communicated to the complainant, and of what time frame?
Thank you. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. That question actually has been asked and answered and been in the handouts that you'll find on your chair. If there's not a copy there, please let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wallace. Are there any other questions from the gallery? No? Well, thank you very much. Moving on to item 6, presentations. It's 6.1, we have petitions. Councillor Diana Shand.
Yes, I have a petition I'd like to present to the Shire President, Shire of Donnybrook Balingup Councillors assembled. We, the undersigned, being the residents and friends of Preston River Valley, respectfully request the Donnybrook Balingup Shire Council to not approve application P23002, Extractive Industry, gravel lots 130 and 3671, which has since been struck, Donnybrook, Boyup Road, Yabberup.
Madam President, I would recommend to the council that you move and second receipt of the petition, and we'll include the wording at the top of the petition and the unconfirmed number that's been referenced in the presentation.
Thank you, CEO Hunt. Would council like to move this?
Just
That the-
receipt of the petition, and then we'll include the wording of that, and that there are 100 and...
Would council like to move that the petition be accepted? Would someone in the council like to move that the Councillor Shand and seconded Deputy President Lisa Glover? All in favour? Thank you. At 6.2, we have presentations, and there are none tonight. At 6.3, deputations. We have 2 deputations tonight. The first will be Mr. Jay McCormick and Dr. Julianne Hilvers, who wish to make a deputation to Council to this meeting in relation to extractive industry at Lot 130, Donnybrook, Boyup Road, Yabberup, under licence application P23002.
Thank you, President. I'm just waiting for a PowerPoint presentation to come up. So, yeah, thank you, President. My name is Jay McCormack, and I'm the elected chair of Save Preston River Valley. And we like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Wilman and Kanyang nations, and their continuing connection to land, community and the waters. I'm hoping this works. It does. Okay, we are a volunteer group focused on protecting the Preston River Valley from mining and other extractive industries that threaten our agricultural and tourism businesses, aesthetic beauty of our valley, recreation and forested areas, biodiversity, local properties and the river itself. We currently have 128 members inside the Preston River Valley and 36 members outside. The map you can see is what we consider to be the Preston River Valley, which includes the catchment area of the Preston River and local localities. This is our position statement, and it really sums up what we're all about. Preston River Valley is a biozone of regional significance incompatible with mining and major extractive industries. I won't read the rest because you can all read yourself. We exist because we have a large and like-minded, unified community living in the Preston Valley. People who are deeply connected to the land, the water, and the lifestyle that is gifted in such a beautiful place, such that we are currently surveying the Preston Valley in relation to a exploration tenement application. There is 256 people surveyed so far, and 98% support the position statement of SPRV, and that is that mining and extractive industries are not supported by the local community. We're a large and unified group, as you can see. and we're very active and very passionate. I'll hand you to Julianne.
So I'd like to acknowledge that we are a vibrant, proactive community and one where everyone looks out for each other, and that was very much evident in January 23 when the fires came through our valley. The day that after the fires came through, we received notice about this second application for a major extraction industry on our doorstep. Despite this, the community focusing on bushfire recovery, 86 submissions were made to council, 85 objecting to it. When we've just given you a petition saying 105 residents are also objecting. So you can see very clearly the position of the community. And I trust that the councillors, as our elected representatives, you've taken the time to actually review some of those submissions and listen to the wide range of concerns of the community, which are informed not just by people's professional, but also they're very much their lived experience of living in the valley. Okay, head the other way. Okay, so just to summarise some of the key objections, I mean, obviously it's on our doorstep. And it's not just 5 people that will be impacted by this development, but the very many people who live in Yabberup locality, including the Yabberup hamlet, which is soon to be, I believe, become acknowledged as a town site. And will be required to live with the accumulation of impacts associated with this industry on our doorstep. And as you're aware, and you can see that there's already been an area that has already been an industry that has been approved by council for the same landholder. Our objection is that it's so close to the Preston River and it's only 560 metres north of the closest to the river. And we have tributaries flowing from the south and that are adjoining the extraction area on the west and the east at approximately 140 and 122 metres respectively. DWER notes that the current slopes across the proposed extraction areas range between 5 and 11%. Due to the slope size of the extraction area, there may be potential for sediment transport downslope from these areas into the downslope properties and onto Donnybrook Boyup Road during major storm events. And I'd like to point it out, in our current world, that's actually happening more regularly than it did in the past. The Preston River is a key major river system in the southwest. It's vital to supporting the prime agricultural industry within the Shire of Donnybrook-Balingup. It wouldn't exist without it. What happens in the upper Preston, where we are, also impacts the middle Preston here in Donnybrook, but also impacts what happens all the way through to Bunbury. And we know in a drying climate, protecting our river systems are even more important for supporting food security and biodiversity. This impact of the change in climate was very evident in our past summer. We need to acknowledge that there's people in that area sitting below that extractions area that use the groundwater for drinking. So any change in that landscape is going to impact their groundwater and their drinking water supplies, should it happen. And further, we acknowledge that it's prime agricultural land, which is valuable. Again, we need to acknowledge how important that is in our current world, and that this industry will actually change the land from prime agriculture to general agricultural land. And DPIR doesn't support the extraction of gravel on land zoned priority agriculture. All the proposed extraction areas are zoned prime priority agriculture. And so it changes the free draining part of the soil, and this will impact the ability of what can be grown on that land moving into the future. At the council briefing last week, it was indicated that the Shire does not require this gravel locally and it would be sent outside the Shire. In terms of quality of life, I don't know that I can make this happen. I do have some sound there. I don't know if you've actually ever heard what gravel extraction and crushing sounds like. It is actually quite significant. And noise assessments that were in the reports don't seem to reflect the topography of actually living in a valley. Have you ever seen someone, or have you ever yourself been at the top of a valley, yell and hear it echo and bounce around? I'm at the 200 metre mark, which is those pink lines. And the tracks wake me up, quite often in the morning at 4 a.m. when they start to come through. noise bounces around in our valley, and that's why everyone's been so adamant about making that a point for people to know. And you don't know that unless you live there. The proposal is to focus on crushing and screening over 4 months across 2 sites in winter. Now, while somebody who's in the Bushfire Brigade, while I see that makes sense in terms of fire risk and perhaps dust, but I'd like you to acknowledge that this is prime tourism period. People visiting the valley do not pay to listen to crushing and extraction. The same applies in terms of visual mapping, only being taken from the main road. It's not just about people who drive past, but the visual amenity available to those living and visiting the valley. Okay, so social impact. The report states that that's been effectively managed. I don't know where, there's nothing else in the report that actually addresses it. The fact that there's so many objections already shown and that there's been such a negative already indicates that there's been a negative social, emotional, health impacts on the community since coming together at Yabberup Hall, and approval of the first application, particularly given the recommendation was for it to be refused. So there's been significant impact already on the community. While many objections were received by nearby landowners and members of the wider community expressing concerns on how this current proposal will impact them, it's not in the report. We have a significant proportion of people who are at home during the day, working from home, or are shift workers, sleeping during the day, those who have retired, and those living with a disability who wish to experience a good quality of life. While you say this is only short-term impact, 5 years is enough to impact the health of any individual and community and to impact future plans and well-being.
SPRV do question the current compliance strategy as outlined in the report, that it's essentially a 1-year or annual compliance. There's only a $20,000 bond to cover rehabilitation works and $250 for a breach. This operation, being in a priority agricultural zone, being in close proximity to the Preston River and Yabberup Hamlet, requires much more stringent compliant measures, is our belief. As stated many, many times, we love our valley. It's an eco-friendly place to live, work and explore. Promote Preston has done wonderful work in the past and continuing to do work in the future. We hope to continue our conversation with the Shire of Donnybrook Balingup, being Promote Preston, and others to create a walk, bike, horse, rail trail from Donnybrook to Mumballup. That's just one example. The Commissioner's approval of Extracted Industries application P22022 against community concerns and executive recommendation was wrong. The picture on this slide is how the valley has been for a very long time, and the community believe it is how it should stay. On behalf of the membership of SPRV and the united community, I implore the Council, the sitting members, please do the right thing. Vote to refuse Extractive Industries application P23002. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open up to councillors any questions that you might have of Dr. Hilbers and Mr. McCormack. No questions? Thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation. Very professionally done. I'd like to invite Belinda O'Brien and Sherry Thomas, please, for their deputation. I take that back. Sorry, it's Mr. Ivan Rose.
Madam President, members of Council, the executive staff of Council, most important ratepayers of Donnybrook and Balingup. My name's Ivan Rose. I'm a neighbour to the potential extraction site that we are debating here this evening. I'd like to pursue two lines. They really marry into the previous presentation that's been given, but more the lines of a practical implication of how it will affect the Shire if this approval is given. The first has been covered very well, and that's the human factors and the relationships and the effect of people that have as a result of this application. The second one is really hasn't been covered that well, I don't think, and that's the best use of resources, the limited resources that we have in the Shire Council for the benefit of all ratepayers. And I emphasise all. I understand amongst your councillors there are three of you who've had interest in mining. Councillor Patrick, Councillor Lindeman and Councillor Davies. There may be others. If there are, I apologise. Certainly in Councillor Patrick's case, I understand, sir, you're a senior manager down at Greensbrook lithium mine, the Greensbushes lithium mine. Is that not true? Okay, which one? I've been given...
Mr Rose, could we avoid referring to people directly to their employments and...
Okay, what I was trying to... the point I was trying to raise, these people are experts in the field, and when you come down to management of resource, we talk about mineral resources. Mineral resources, this is a process where you do have a rare type resource, be it lithium, in this case not so much a gravel, but the same principles apply. And that's dependent on the market for the demand and also the economics that makes it worthwhile to mine. And that brings us back to the extraction that we're debating tonight. There are two extraction sites. One's been approved last year and the other one we're debating at the moment. The one approved last year gave 52,000 tonne per annum of access to the applicant. The one tonight, slightly smaller, just over 47,000. That totals 100,000 tonne of gravel, 100,000 tonne of Shire resources going to one applicant, just one applicant. And as you mentioned, sir, that has the right to pass on to sale to another person. That other person could be a large truck hauling company, and that would form the basis for their resource for gravel for the next 5 years to be sold maybe to the Shire, certainly outside Shires, the Bunbury area and all around the southwest. We would lose control of it, and for what benefit we get from it, my understanding is, I may be corrected, is absolutely nothing. The price that's been paid from this from the residents nearby is huge. To put in perspective, 100,000 tonne equates to 5,000 truck a year to carry them away. That means 10,000 truck movements. And to put in perspective, on the slide there, the first one, I sourced this from the local government guidelines, and you might just be able to make up the Donnybrook requirement, which is 29,500 tonne. Maybe slightly more now because that may be slightly dated. But 29,500 tonne is far, far less than what's been asked for. To put into perspective, if the government, the Australian government, said to BHP or Rio, you can go and mine hematite iron ore in the Pilbara. There's a minimal applications, environmental considerations. You also have to take in the heritage issue of the local Aboriginal people, of course. But there's no payment to us as taxpayers in Australia. The asset is yours, exactly in this case we're debating tonight. The asset is yours. You can use it however you like. You can sell it to Japan, the Chinese, or the assets will come back to you. And once you leave, you can fill it in the hole and depart and see what happens for the next generation of people. The Australian taxpayer would be outraged, and likewise, I think the ratepayers here should be outraged at all to lose that asset for absolutely no cost or benefit to the local community, and that's exactly what we've got at the moment. Bring it back to the local community, the human factors that comes at a cost, a cost we can't even put a value on, and just to get a benefit for one company and a no benefit to the Shire. And as an example for that, let me give you one. What would happen if the council needed gravel reserves in, say, 10 years' time, and we had to go and get another source of gravel? The Shire would probably have to go back to the applicant who we're discussing in a moment and said, I'd like to buy some gravel. And he'll say, fine, or she, them, that's fine, but it'll come to you at a price. So you're in fact be buying back a product that you gave to the applicant years in advance for actually no cost whatsoever. That's the practical significance that we're looking at the moment. With a local planning scheme number 7, I think it is, under zoning primary agriculture, you as councillors have the right and full authority to either approve this application or dismiss this application. The decision is yours and yours alone. I, from the ratepayer's perspective, would humbly request you consider that you use the natural resources that we all have in the Shire for the benefit of everyone in the Shire to use it far more efficiently than what's been posed at the moment. I urge you to dismiss the application. Madam President, thank you for my opportunity to address the chamber.
Thank you, Mr Rose. Do councillors have any questions of Mr Rose?
My question is, what mining industry was I in, do you believe?
Thank you,
No, I just,
Ms Lindeman.
I was given some information. I know she was asleep during my presentation, but
That also was not
through
true.
the chair. Through the chair.
Just standing corrected, I wasn't asleep.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Councillor Lindeman said she was awake during your presentation.
Okay. Apologies if you were councillor, but I noticed your eyes were closed, and no, I apologise in that case. Thank you. But no, I was given some information that one of your family members was involved in mining, and I thought.
Mr Rose, can I refrain from mentioning people's
It's not
families or
correct.
jobs?
No,
Mr Rose, thank you. We're fine.
Councillor just asked me a question. I was attempting to
Through the
answer.
chair.
Sorry,
Okay.
through
So
the
let's
chair,
just
may I
stop.
answer it?
Yep. Councillor Lindeman, your question.
To clarify, that is not correct.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Are there any more questions coming through for Mr Rose? No? Thank you, Mr Rose.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6.4, delegates' reports. We have none tonight. And item 7, confirmation of minutes. Would councillors like to move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held 22nd of May 2024 be confirmed as a true and correct record? Councillor Mitchell, that's moved, and Councillor Lindeman second. Would all in favour? Approved. Item 7.2. Would councillors like to move that the minutes of the special council meeting held 15th of May 2024 be confirmed as a true and correct record? Councillor Patrick, Councillor Shand. All in favour? Thank you. Item 8, reports of committees. Would councillors like to move that the minutes of the Local Emergency Management Committee meeting held 14th of May 2024 be received? Councillor Bailey. Councillor Shand. All in favour? Item 8.2. Would councillors like to move that the minutes of the Audit and Risk Management meeting held 22nd of May 2024 be confirmed as a true and accurate record? Sorry, to receive the minutes. Councillor Bailey and Councillor Patrick. All in favour? Moving on to reports of officers, Director of Operations at 9.1. 9.1.1, Development Application, Extractive Industry, lots 130 Donnybrook Boyup Road in Yabberup. Would councillors like to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Lindeman, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Lindeman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would like to speak to this motion. Not necessarily in the way that I thought I would, but I'm gonna read it through and then I'll tell you what I'm going to conclude. Firstly, I do not wish to see extractive industry on agricultural land. However, roads, concrete and driveways are something every household utilises. So I'm prepared to put my own bias aside and have a look. I took the opportunity to do a site visit along with 2 Shire staff. No other councillors attended. I viewed the proposed site, walked the ground and took in every aspect, including driving past it in both directions on the Boyup Road. Visually, it'll be a lesser impact than I first thought. This property is a working farm with an owner looking to diversify and invest in a variety of income streams. As a background, it has been in their ownership for approximately 14 years. For several years, a foreign interest was running it and the owner took it back and made plenty of new investment. Part of the continual investment into agriculture for this region was 70,000 plum trees with varieties such as Queen Garnet, Angelinas and Vita Plum. Fully reticulated espalier used for the ease of picking, pruning and netting. A further 8,000 cherry trees have been planted in the same manner with the espalier infrastructure and reticulation, and another 4,000 of these trees are on order. With so many farmers pushing over trees, it's exciting to see the reverse in practice. Adapted to innovative farming practices, Boer goats from South Africa are a South African breed, known for their toughness in harsh climates, good meat quality and disease resistance are roaming the paddocks. They're primarily used for eating the weeds and reducing the need for herbicides. There is no need for clearing vegetation for the sites proposed for the gravel extraction, as they are already clear paddocks. The rehabilitation of the land is planned to be covered with a variety of deep-rooted grasses. In the agronomist's report, it noted a historical record of previous gravel extraction site that is now being used as a plum orchard. The agronomist's report also stated there was no problem to recrop or repasture. There is a $20,000 bond required for the works identified by proposed rehabilitation measures, maintenance and completion criteria of the site. The Department of DPIRD talks of the land being zoned priority agriculture, but only mentions its usefulness in viticulture and perennial horticultural production, perennials being shrubs, trees and woody vines. It states further, and I quote, "It is therefore doubtful that the rehabilitated soil will be able to support vineyards in the same extent that it currently does. As the landowner is diversifying, viticulture is not what will need to be replaced, and other farming activities are intended to have been demonstrated successively over previous rehabilitated areas. I'm also aware of a property that most would have passed on the Southwest Highway as you head toward Kirrup on your left. It's a large property previously extracting gravel, now rehabilitated, with a large dam, a big artwork and olive trees seen from the road. I believe the applicant has worked with the Shire and has been willing to address the concerns of their Yabberup community. This land has already been altered from its natural state forest. It is also not a mining company but one particular local in your community. This is an opportunity for our shire to keep farming in the hands of our local farmers. Diversifying is part of the adaptation we will need to meet current economic, social and environmental sustainability goals. At a local level, we have the opportunity to put a variety of conditions on this application. This application has every opportunity, if we decide this application to go to if this application does go to the State Administrative Tribunal, which will cost our ratepayers, plus we could see many of our conditions for the development and the operation reduced. The State Administrative Tribunal can determine this application meeting requirements and it will be given the go-ahead. For the above reasons, I have thought about supporting the application to lower the risks and concerns of our community and to ensure the least negative impact to the region. However, I appreciate the social impact that this has and will not be supporting it. But I do also appreciate the active members of the Yabberup community and hope that they are going to garnish broad support against the larger threat in their area, and that's a possible nuclear power plant in the region. Thank you.
Councillor Lindeman. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. I actually had written something, nowhere near as articulate as that, but left it sitting on my dressing table at home. Essentially very much the same. Look, I appreciate the work and the effort that the officers have put in relation to all the work that's gone into this. I've reviewed, not all, but the majority of the objections that have been received, and from my personal thought, I don't necessarily agree with all of it. You know, from a visual side of things, if I'm driving a long way on a tourist route, the last thing I think of is that 1 minute blip of something that I saw on the way, as against the, you know, kilometres and kilometres of rolling green hills and so on. I acknowledge that it's private property, so the extraction isn't a shire commodity that we have the choice to sort of keep and sell off or whatever else. It's a privately owned premises, unlike mines that are leased, and so on and so forth. Regardless of my thoughts in relation to the objections, one thing that can't be overlooked from my perspective is purely and simply the emotional and social impact that it's having on those particular members of that community. And I think that can't be overstated, or it can't be understated. It's a very significant thing, and based nearly purely, obviously the DPIRD report is a significant report as well, but do acknowledge what Councillor Lindeman said, and also Michelle has provided some details previously that it does fit in within the zoning of the primary agriculture. It's actually an allowable activity under that zoning, but I do encourage the other councillors to not support it based on the emotional impact that it's having on a very large part of that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Davey.
I'd just like to foreshadow an alternate motion that's been presented to the councillors, which I'll prepare should this item fail.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Bailey.
Through the Chair, councillors and community, my concern here is with this is prime agricultural land. We've already had one approval. If we get another approval, we're setting a precedent. And where does that stop? Does it ever stop? So I think we need to keep that in mind. Once we set a precedent, we legally could be bound to it.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Shand.
Yeah, I'd just like to tag in on the requirements of gravel. That was raised, but further to this, surrounding all our shires are other shires who also have over and above 7 extraction sites, Capel unconfirmed up to 14 pending applications for the bore. And my concern is that when we put all of these together, we have an oversupply, and I understand that this is commercial, but when you're talking about then ripping agricultural land, priority agricultural land, then we're talking about something entirely different here. This is not sentiment, this is waste.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Would anyone else like to speak to or against the motion? Councillor Mitchell.
I've lost track of who's for and who's against. However, I'm going to be extremely brave and stand up that I am for this motion. The reason being I've always prided myself with being a roads, rates and rubbish councillor. I do understand there are significant difficulties around it, but I also do understand that we do need this commodity. I hadn't made up my mind until I was driving in, and as I drove down the Preston, I actually remembered over many years how many of the sites on the either side or on the south side of the Preston of that road has been gravel pits, and how they've rehabilitated into nice pasture. And one of the ones that I noticed was one of the worst and ugliest gravel pits for quite some time. I think it was the Premium Pasture. It's probably been seeded up by the look of it. So it is looking good as pasture. I'm a farmer from way back. I understand the challenges around farming and future food requirements, and I believe with modifications, our farming will look very different. So I think the priority land and the traditional farming is something of the past. So I can't consider that in my deliberations. I also noted the item that you, Councillor Lindeman, addressed. I remembered that had been a gravel pit as well. So I do understand the resilience as a farmers and the resilience of returning soil to a productive area. So as much as I know where this debate's I can have a good idea where this debate's going, I'd just like to get it on the table that I support the recommendation, and I'm brave enough to continue on where I stand as a councillor. And I do thank the officers for all the reading. It was quite substantial, so thank you very, very much. And it was very informative, and it took a great deal to come to the decision. I've been reading, I think we've all been reading and looking at this agenda since it came out, and prior to that as well, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Would any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Glover?
Thank you, and yes, I would like to also thank the officers for the mountains of work that they have done to prepare this item to come to council tonight. I'm speaking against this application as well. Apart from all the other great points that have been brought forward, I think that we're in a time where our climate is changing. Things are different. Recovery from this such type of work may be a lot more difficult. But my other point is around the dieback plan, the brochure that they have included in the application. And that's what it is. It's a best practice brochure. There is no information on that as how they might manage dieback. The dieback plan is very generic. It's vague. There's no mention of where washdown stations will be or located and how they will be managed and drained. Will the trucks be turned around if they're not clean on entry? If not, then they will need to be washed down. How does that happen? It talks about dieback-free water, but what does the proponent have to actually certify that that's going to be dieback-free water? It doesn't sort of suggest that, it just says that it will be. Is that water then to be used for dust suppression, which may also cause further concerns? And because the plan mentions dieback, will the proponent be seeking to have this resource deemed as dieback-free? We don't know that, because that leads to other concerns about bringing that product into any other area. And it would need to be really detailed in a management plan to protect the hygiene status of the pit and prevent spread of the pathogen to other destination sites as well. Because this information is not included in the application, I find that it's just not complete. And I really, apart from all the other reasons, this was my particular reason as for not wanting to pass this item tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? We'll put the motion to vote. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, right of reply.
That's fine.
Councillor Lindeman. You waived it, sorry. Thank you. We'll put the item to vote. Those in favour of the item? Thank you. And those not in favour of the item? Defeated. Councillor Davey, you mentioned that you had an alternative motion?
Yes, it's quite wordy, but I'll read through the motion and then I'll provide my context after that. So 3 alternate motions were put forward by councillors, myself, Councillor Shand and President McCarthy, and we have worked to present a single motion with assistance from Shire staff. Do we have to have the motion up before I start reading it?
We're just getting it up, Councillor Davey.
Great. Am I required to read through the motion in its entirety?
Your preference? You're not required to, but it might be. Perhaps.
Yes,
Yes.
I will.
Yes,
I'll read through
perhaps,
it.
yeah.
So the motion is that Council, pursuant to Schedule 2, Part 9, Clause 68(2)(c) of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015, refuse to grant development approval for application P23002 for the extractive industry on Lot 130 Donnybrook Boyup Brook Road, Yabberup, for the following reasons. Reason A, in relation to Part 3, Clause 3.6.2 of LPS 7 and Clause 62(2)(a) of the Dean provisions, the applicant has failed to sufficiently demonstrate that the proposed development will be consistent with and not contrary to the aims and objectives of the priority agriculture zone. Specifically 3.6.2 subclauses as they relate to the protection and management of agricultural land resources, biodiversity and the promotion of intensive agricultural uses, particularly in regard to the following points. 1. Require the protection of the rural infrastructure and agricultural land resources. 3. Support the improvement of resource and investment security for agricultural and allied industry production. 4. Require protection and enhancement of biodiversity. 5. Encourage value-adding opportunities to agricultural products at source. 6. Support a wide variety of productive agricultural and rural activities. 8. Support sensible use and management of resources and the proper direction and control of development. And 9. Promote the existing intensive agricultural land use. Reason B. In relation to Part 3, Clause 3.6.1 of LPS 7, the applicant has failed to sufficiently demonstrate the proposed development will provide for the sustainable use of high-quality agricultural land and fails to sufficiently demonstrate that the development will preserve existing agricultural production. Reason C. In relation to Clause 67(2)(a), C, Q and ZA of the Dean provisions, the applicant has failed to sufficiently demonstrate that the proposed extraction will not jeopardise the future agricultural use of the land in relation to biodiversity, soil degradation and protection of the land as a long-term agricultural resource. Reason D, it is noted the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development, DPIRD, has provided comments opposing the development proposal as Lot 31 Donnybrook Boyup Brook Road, Yabberup is zone priority agriculture within LPS 7. The DPIRD advice states that 1. The department does not support the extraction of gravel on land zoned priority agriculture and all the proposed extraction areas are zoned priority agriculture. 2. All the land zone priority agriculture has a high to very high or moderate to very high capability for viticulture based on DPIRD regional scale soil mapping as evident in Figure 1. 3. The land identified for gravel extraction is currently planted with grapes, vineyard, and the applicant proposed to replace the vineyard with pasture following the removal of gravel. 4. The proposed extraction of gravel will remove the free draining part of the soil that is beneficial for viticultural and perennial horticultural production. The extraction of gravel will have a negative impact on the capability of the land for viticulture and perennial horticulture, therefore making it doubtful that the rehabilitated soil will be able to support vineyards to the same extent as it currently does. Reason E, in relation to Clause 67M and N of the Dean provisions, the applicant has failed to sufficiently demonstrate that the proposed development won't adversely affect the rural landscape of the locality. Reason F, approval of the proposed development would result in an undesirable planning outcome, as evidenced by the significant public objection to the proposal and the existing and ensuing social impacts of such a decision. I would also like to include a note that the work done by the applicant and the Shire planning staff to try to address matters raised in public submissions. I've provided additional background information, which I'll read as part of the motion. The Office's report refers to State Planning Policy 2.5 Rural Planning. The purpose of this policy is to protect and preserve Western Australia's rural land assets due to the importance of their economic, natural resource, food production, environmental and landscape values. The policy notes the likelihood that increasing population will increase pressure on rural land for food production and acknowledges the likelihood of competing land uses becoming a planning issue. Priority agricultural land that is land that is considered high quality agricultural land due to suitable soils, climate, the availability of water resources and access to services. The policy aims to preserve rural land in general for primary production and basic materials. Sorry, that should be basic raw materials. However, contrary to the information provided by the Senior Planning Officer in the agenda briefing, separate definitions are provided for primary production, which includes extractive industries, and for priority agricultural land, which has particular significance in the definitions for food production purposes. The objectives clearly state that particular focus will be given to the protection of priority agricultural land for food production, not for general primary production pursuits.
Thank you for reading that through, Councillor Davey. And you'd like to move that motion?
I'd like to move that one, please.
And Councillor Shand would like to second the motion? Councillor Davey, would you like to say any more to the motion?
Yes, so I'd like to note the work done by the applicant and Shire planning staff to address the matters raised by government departments and in public submissions. I would also like to acknowledge the value of gravel as an important natural resource in both Shire and agricultural operations, and note that areas are designated for strategic raw materials for this purpose under the planning strategy, and that gravel can be extracted by farmers for non-commercial gain on priority agriculture land. However, extraction of non-renewable resources is not a sustainable, compatible or complementary use of high-quality agricultural land. Removal of the top metre of the soil profile will impact the capability of the land to support a broad range of agricultural pursuits and impact the hydrogeology of an already stressed catchment. I agree with the position taken by the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development. The agronomist report, which was prepared coincidentally in June 2024, included discussion of 3 of 98 samples collected from 10 test pits on the property and provides very basic anecdotal evidence of successful rehabilitation nearby. Given my background in soil science, I regard the evidence provided in the report to be insufficient to prove that the land capability will not be degraded by surface mining, particularly in a drying climate. I would also like to draw Councillors' attention to the fact that the considerable environmental risk posed by extraction activities on priority agricultural land in the surrounding community in the Preston Valley catchment has warranted the development of a broad array of mitigation measures. Unfortunately, relying on self-regulation and annual compliance check and a complaints register will only be indicative of problems once the damage is already done and the resource is gone for good. I also note that the absolute minimum has been done regarding due diligence for Aboriginal heritage values, and there has been no effort to identify unregistered sites within the area despite the presence of tributaries to the Preston River. Given this development application is for a discretionary land use in the priority agriculture zone, I believe the council has the right to use their discretion when considering developments of this nature and the freedom to decide what would be in the best long-term interests of the broader community. I believe that it would be in the best long-term interests of our community and in the interests of intergenerational equity, as mentioned by Councillor Shand, to focus on food security in perpetuity rather than support the removal of a soil profile that has been developed over millennia for the short-term financial gain of the applicant.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Sorry, Councillor David. Councillor Shand, would you like to speak?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Davey. I normally say ditto, so I'm going to say ditto to all of that. But I'd just like to also highlight the fact that DPIRD made it clear twice, not once, twice, that no agronomy report would literally, change their minds. Priority agriculture is our food bowl. Since this first application was received, I've been against the use of extractive industries being permitted on priority agriculture or prime rural land for this very reason. Once the land is destroyed, you can't get it back. And we all see what's going on in the world right now, and we need to be protective of the areas that say that they are where our food comes from. Noted that, you know, our diminishing resources of this nature, they're a very threat to the resources for our survival, whether we want to look at it and say, oh, you know, Yabberup's just a tiny little area, but the soil there is good. The soil is very, very good, and our water is good, and our resources through that area signify the hard work that the people in this area have actually put into their farms. But what is not mentioned is that the EPA has an overarching principle that also align with these regulations. We're talking about environmental protection here. And one that caught my attention was that the development does not result in land degradation or prejudices the productive end use. We can clearly see that, in fact, this does when we're discussing priority agricultural land. Furthermore, the health and well-being of my community, where I live, should never be so dismissed to the point of saying that we should have to put up with it for 5 years. And even this is negligible because it would depend on the request for renewal of said extraction site. I believe if we allow this, as Councillor Bailey said, we're setting precedents for all our priority land to be used for purposes that fall out of line with the agricultural land uses, specifically intensive production. And the next item that really hasn't been spoken about is noise management. EPA regulations are directed, they state that the applicant needs to demonstrate that the proposed noise management measures can reasonably, practicably, or realistically achieve compliance with EPA regulations. And we are directed to vote only on the current application before us, but all appeals represent cumulative effect. And the first one is crushing and screening. I myself have lived, as I have stated before, next to crushing and screening. It is not pleasant. There are so many points I could raise, and I feel for the staff whose roles are to serve the applicant and to serve the people, how difficult it must be for you in this situation. But I believe we should never get lost in the serving of the applicant to the loss to the community. Given the history, I understand the volume of work and hours that would have been put into this, and I do not for one moment wish to be in your shoes. However, I am an elected member. I do represent the people, and I believe they've spoken very loudly and very emphatically. And I have to stand with my original indirect vote to the Commissioner and state no. No to all use of land in this manner.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Against?
So against the amended motion, yes.
The alternate motion.
The alternate motion. And the only reason I'm speaking against it is the specific wording proposed within the alternate motion. If an SAT request comes in, so the applicant takes it to the SAT, it's going to be the administration staff that need to be able to defend the reasons that we've made the decisions. To demonstrate that the applicant has failed to sufficiently demonstrate some of these things, I don't know how strongly the administration are going to be able to defend that at the SAT. There's terminologies in here which I would find that I believe would be very, very hard to actually substantiate. Not that I don't believe them, I think it's well written and I personally believe it, but to actually substantiate some of the terminologies at the SAT, I think is a greater risk than having to defend or having the opportunity to defend it more broadly based on the initial motion, which doesn't have all of the very, very specifics in it. It just frees up the administration to be able to defend it a little bit stronger without such specifics. That's my thoughts in relation to this particular alternate motion.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Would anyone like to speak to the motion at all, either for or against?
I would speak against the motion also. I think the work's been done. There's a lot of referral to, you know, farming and stuff. This is still a farm. It's a workable farm, and the person has invested heavily in it. And I think this is innately too negative towards the person that's done the work on a farm. I also think there's no one here sitting here really truly farming except for probably Councillor Goobler that knows the work that goes into that and is actually producing something off the land. Councillor Mitchell, just in case you are still farming heavily? Hobby.
Through the chair.
Yep, sorry. Anyway, so no, I wouldn't support this. I think that, I think we've said enough.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Deputy President Glover?
I feel like that music's for me. Yes, I would be speaking in favour of this motion. I too support the fact that priority agriculture is of prime importance. We do need to consider our drying climate and the ability to rehabilitate land such as this, as well as stipulated in the foreshadowed motion. So I would be in support of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bailey?
Through the chair, councillors, my statement earlier on about where will the next application be once we open the doors for priority agricultural land, and we've got a lot of it in town here, and I understand the value of gravel, but maybe we should be looking at areas that aren't going to affect people and the environment, and that's some of the best land we've got in the whole Shire out there for tourism, for living. But there's other things in here that worry me. You know, the contract was for, or the approval was for 5 years, or within an extended period as determined by the Shire. Now, there's some approvals there that are already out 10 years. And that Shire, the word Shire does not mean council, it means Shire staff. So that can be done without that.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bailey, are you speaking for or against the motion? Speaking for, sorry. Yep. Yep. Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Mitchell?
I'll speak against. However, I absolutely acknowledge and maybe even suggest that Councillor Davey should go to SAT and defend because it was a very, very professional, and Councillor Shand and her understanding. I learnt about soils from you in those few minutes, so thank you very much. However, I will be voting against. I understand, I read the room where it's going. However, I just wanted to acknowledge the work put in by everybody and the fact that we'll get to an end point in a polite and proper manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Thank you, councillors. Right of reply, Councillor Davey.
Nothing significant, just to say I appreciate everyone's perspectives. You can see that everyone's bringing a slightly different perspective to the table on dieback, for example, and acknowledge that our Shire is currently developing a new risk policy and framework. We have not previously considered social impacts in our risk assessment processes, and I think this process is really bringing to light how important that is for our community, and that it's something we need to consider more fully when when deciding on these sorts of proposals.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. We'll put this alternate motion to vote. Those in favour? And those against? That's carried 5-4. I'd just like to say before moving on in the agenda that I'm extremely proud of our community and our councillors and our executive and staff. I don't think we've done as well in any previous motion, and I'm just proud of us all. Thank you.
Madam President, if I might, we need to just capture the reasons for not going with the officer's recommendation. I'm not to do that.
Are we happy to use anything from the alternate motion?
The reasons were documented in the alternate motion. from my perspective.
May
is
I
there
add the piece that I did too, because it was in addition to what Councillor Davey had put to, and that is about the dieback compliance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Normally, it would be fairly succinct, that it was the view of the council that there were alternative matters other than just raised in the report that needed to be taken into consideration.
I was actually refuting the
Components.
agronomist report as being sufficient evidence to prove that we could retain
We could add that as well, and then that
the
would give it some
capability of the
substance.
land.
Okay.
So I think there's some simple language that can be taken from the broader alternate motion.
Yeah, but we need to be very specific. This is just for the, this is not for the SAT hearing. This is just for the legislation requires if you overturn a recommendation from the officer, you've got to articulate what it is, and it's usually fairly succinct. I'm just trying to capture that.
So I had
Councillor Davey?
I'd originally proposed an alternate motion that council refuses to grant development approval for P23002 on the basis that the proposed development will adversely impact upon the agricultural use of the land and nearby land uses.
Terrific, thank you. We'll capture that.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Item 9.1.2, revision of Local Emergency Management Committee, LEMC, meeting schedule. Would councillors like to move the motion? Councillor Lindemann. Councillor Bailey. Councillor Lindemann, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bailey? Would anyone like to speak to the motion? We'll put the motion to vote. Those in favour, right of reply first to Councillor Lindemann. No. We'll put the item to vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item 9.1.3, Indigenous Yarning Circle Project. Would councillors like to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Bailey and Councillor Davey. Councillor Bailey, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Bailey? Councillor Davey?
So my support for the motion comes on the basis that the Shire advised that they'd undertaken consultation with local elders and community members. And I would like to ask a question, if I could.
Sorry, you would like to ask a question? Sorry, there's a bit of background noisy. Director of Operations? Oh, what is your question?
Just answer it anyway.
Just to confirm that $4,000 will remain in the account for future use for similar projects.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. I can confirm we're only asking for a budget of 6,000, so the balance will remain.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Right of reply, Councillor Bailey.
No, thank you.
We'll put the motion to vote. Those in favour? Carried. Moving on to 9.2, Director of Finance and Corporate. 9.2.1, Statement of Financial Activity Report as at the 31st of May 2024. Would councillors like to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Patrick. Councillor Lindemann. Councillor Patrick, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Lindemann. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Right of reply, Councillor Patrick. We'll put the motion to vote. All in favour? That's carried. Item 9.2.2, schedule of accounts paid as at the 31st of May 2024. Would councillors like to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Patrick? Councillor Gubler? Councillor Patrick? Councillor Gubler? No. Would anyone like to speak to that recommendation? Councillor Patrick? We'll put that to vote. All in favour? And that's carried. Item 9.2.3, the Great Southern Care Company Proprietary Limited lease assignment. Would councillors like to move the executive recommendation?
Excuse me, Madam President, I did submit an impartiality that was
I
on the
beg your
same
pardon?
form because Mother's a resident of Toohey Lodge.
Thank you, I wasn't aware.
Thank you.
Do you have that recorded? Andrew? Yeah. Thank you. Now, would we like to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Mitchell,
I'm impartial.
second. Councillor Gubler. Councillor Mitchell.
Oh yes, I've delved into this and had a very deep read of it, and it is just effectively changing a name. So I've got totally impartial, and it's a very simple operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gubler. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? We'll put the motion to vote. Oh, sorry, right a reply. Councillor Mitchell? No. We'll put the motion to vote. Those in favour? Carried. Item 9.2.4, the desktop valuation for lot 501 on deposited plan 72099, 41 Bentley Street in Donnybrook.
Through the chair.
Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that a motion to defer until a suitable time for the new CEO to have a closer look at this. I believe this is all part of asset rationalisation, and we need to do our work due diligence and include everything else we've got to look at the same time.
We can actually bring the motion up and then talk to the motion.
Motion to defer is the motion.
Oh, okay.
What's here is a
As in-
recommendation. I'd like to see this held over until the new CEO's on board. So we look at rationalisation as a whole rather than just as piecemeal here and there.
I'm just going to check the process, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bailey, we'll put the motion forward and then we'll move the amendment. Okay? We'll raise this motion
Well,
and then
hang
we'll
on,
put your
there
amendment
is no
forward.
motion on the table. The only motion on the table is the motion I've just proposed.
That's what we'll say. We'll put this motion forward and you're proposing an amendment.
Which motion are you putting forward?
The motion that is here, the executive recommendation,
But that's an executive recommendation, that's not a motion.
will be, yeah,
Sorry?
yeah.
Yeah, I understand if somebody moves it, it becomes a motion, but I've just placed a motion before council.
Well, we'd like to raise this motion and then you can propose an amendment.
Alternative.
Yeah. Or an alternate if you want. Just as we did with the gravel pit, same thing.
Sorry?
Just as we do when we put the motion up, that's the existing recommendation up.
I'd ask for a ruling from the CEO. Gary, am I correct in what I'm doing?
Excuse me, Councillor Bailey, through the chair.
Through the chair. I'd ask for a ruling on that from the CEO. Now,
Well, the CEO doesn't give the ruling, I do, but we can ask CEO for input.
You give me the ruling then.
We'll-
Is what is here a motion or a
Councillor Bailey,
recommendation?
we're just referring to that now. We're looking into it now.
So the CEO's looking at it.
The motion, sorry, the recommendation in the report is a recommendation from essentially the CEO. There is no deferral motion in the meeting procedures as a refer back motion. In your meeting procedures, it usually is, but it's not in these. And the reason I know this, I had to look at it in recent weeks. The mechanism I'd recommend in this instance would be that this motion is formally moved and seconded, and then you move an amendment that this matter be held over until such time as the new CEO commences duties.
Through the chair, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, would councillors like to move the motion? Councillor Patrick, seconded Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Patrick, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yeah, so my understanding is that this recommendation is purely noting the desktop valuation, and I believe that we can note it. We've received it. We've had the opportunity as a confidential attachment to review it, so we note the receipt. And then the next point is to defer any consideration until a business plan addressing it is prepared. Now, points 3 and 4 authorises the CEO to prepare a business plan and request the CEO include $10,000 for the preparation of the business plan. Now, given that our current temporary CEO has 3 days left in the seat, I'm very confident that they won't be getting to that point during the current tenure, and it's not something that the acting CEO, whoever that may be, following CEO Hunt, will pick it up either. So I'm quite comfortable and confident that all we are doing is noting it and deferring it, allocating some money out of the budget to allow for the consideration around a business plan, which is going to be required. So we're not actually approving anything significant here and now. We are noting and deferring and allocating some budget funds for the work that is going to be required to be done no matter who's sitting in the CEO seat. So I believe that this is quite a reasonable recommendation from the executive.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Mitchell.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor.
Through you to the CEO, may I ask what would be a reasonable, because I usually like these type of things to have a time frame on them, and considering all the items that Councillor Patrick's just mentioned, we all know we have to look at our assets and the budget and the change of CEO. What would be a suitable time frame, would you see, that it'd be reasonable to bring this back to council?
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. This is not going to be done before end of September. There's a lot of work to do, so I can't guarantee, but probability is massively high that this is not a matter, and it'd have to come back to the council in any shape or form. Nothing can happen without this coming back to the council. So nothing will occur in terms of a business plan to a point of finality, if that gives comfort to Councillor Bailey. It's not going to happen inside 3 months.
Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Did you want to speak to the motion, Councillor Mitchell?
I will speak to the motion. However, I will ask Councillor Patrick whether he would consider an amendment to put in a date of October to be brought back prior to the October OCM. I do note that and I do understand that there needs to be some responsibility, some timeframes rather than the never land.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. CEO Hunt.
That's entirely in the hands of the council and the proposer of the motion.
I'll leave that to right of reply. Councillor Shand, did you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I think that we could potentially change this because I do agree with Councillor Bailey that we've got asset optimisation or rationalisation to go through, and it's important to put money into a budget, but I don't believe anything should be spent at this point in time.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Councillor Glover.
I am of a similar belief. We know that what we have here is a shortfall in our assets, our asset maintenance, etc. And we know that we need to do some form of asset rationalisation as well. My concern is that what we're doing here is somewhat piecemeal, and we're not looking at our assets in whole. And although the medical centre would like to have an outcome sooner rather than later, I just have a concern that the outcome after a business plan might not be what people are expecting as well. But I do think this is an overall plan that needs to be had, and at the moment it's coming at it just bit by bit, and it's costing us valuable money that we could be putting towards using purchasing a IT program that could help, or actually looking at asset rationalisation in an overall plan, and this be part of it. I think we're just wasting a lot of money to find an outcome when we could be looking at the overall picture rather than bit by bit. It's a big puzzle that we need to be putting together. This is one piece, and I believe that we're wasting $10,000 by just doing it in that way.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Just a moment. Councillor Lindemann?
Yeah, look, I would support this. This has been something that's going on for quite a long time, so I wouldn't call it piecemeal. I would say that we have been looking at this. It's been raised, it's been going on since the Commissioner was here. What you're doing is allocating or including $10,000 for the preparation of the business plan in the budget. The budget's not finalised. You can come back in, you can pull it all apart again if you have to, but you have to allocate it to start with and then know how to cut your cloth from there.
Thank you, Councillor Lindemann. Councillor Davey?
I would like to speak for the motion. I think it's really important that we get our business cases done up front, and we've learnt that lesson the hard way, before we make any further decisions. I think the community has demonstrated that this asset is of strategic importance to them, and it's something that would be supported in a rationalisation process down the track. Building the business case would be supported in a rationalisation program down the track. So for assets of strategic importance, I think it's worth mitigating the risk of losing the facility by acting on it in a timely manner, and I recognise the rationalisation process could go on for years.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. I'd just like to bring to Council's attention, I'll come to you, John, that we passed a resolution, and CEO Hunt's just handed this to me to remind us. We passed a resolution 18/24. 1, the Council acknowledges the request to purchase, however, given the inability for the property to be sold due to the property being on Crown land, that Council defers the matter. And 2, requests the CEO to initiate the process to acquire Reserve 52021 from the Crown. So just a reminder. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, and I understand that process is happening. Question to the CEO. Gary, who would be doing the business plan, and what would we get out of that business plan to clarify everything for us?
Thank you, Councillor Bailey.
There are people who specialise in this. This is not something we would do in-house, or I would recommend you do in-house. There are people who specialise in this particular area, and they have done similar work for a number of local governments. I think, in fact, some of you may well have engaged with one individual group. They specialise in looking at individual properties, and many local governments have tried business plans on a couple of properties, and then they've used that experience to do a whole of asset process. And I must admit, based on the original decision the council made, I thought that was the process you were headed down. So if I've misunderstood it, then I'm sorry, but that's why the recommendation you have tonight is based on the advice that I got way back in 18/24.
Councillor Bailey?
I'm far more confident now that you this is not just going to be $10,000. You're talking to people with qualifications that we don't know about, and that gives me a lot of comfort. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Bailey. Are you speaking to the motion again? Because we only get one time.
Oh, no, I was going to ask a question. That's
Questions,
all right.
okay. Councillor Shand.
Just would it be prudent then that we also start to look at those or even have presentations made in relation to asset optimisation?
Thank you, councillor Shand. CEO Hunt.
Would it be appropriate? Yes. If I was still here, you would be, whether you liked it or not. And I'm sure that both the temporary CNO and whoever you appoint as the CEO will have no option but to bring such a proposal forward.
Thank you, councillor Shand. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Patrick, right of reply.
No, look, all I was going to flag in my right of reply was literally what the CEO brought to your attention, was the fact that this recommendation is based on a resolution that we passed as a council, and it's a continuation of that. So no, I still believe that it's worded appropriately and accurately, and it's totally appropriate. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, councillor Patrick. We'll put the motion to vote. Those in favour? And those not? Thank you. It's carried.
Through the chair, before you go to the next, I'm going to need to declare an interest. I'm not the owner of land, but I am now in control of that land. So I'll declare an interest and leave the room.
This is for item 9.2.5?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, we'll just get you to sign a form, councillor Bailey. And is this a financial interest or an impartiality interest or proximity? Can we get your advice on that, CEO Hunt?
If you're potentially in control of the land, I would.
Thank you, councillor Bailey. And councillor Gubler also has a financial interest. So both councillor Gubler and councillor Bailey have left the room. Okay, item 9.2.5, group valuation of land policy. Would councillors like to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Davey and councillor Patrick second. Councillor Davey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. So I initially moved the motion back in, I think it was March, to ensure that fairness and consistency in our approach, make sure we didn't establish a precedent without a policy to back it up. I just wanted to reiterate that group ratings are an existing landgate policy that is already applied for common ownership on contiguous lots. So we're only deciding what to do if contiguous lots have the same family name but not identical parties. I am support of the identical parties option because should Shire staff be responsible for validating if different family members are operating as one family unit or one business unit, I think it gets very tricky and it creates administrative issues. So I can recognise the argument either way for common ownership versus identical ownership, but I support the motion as it stands.
Thank you, councillor Davey. Councillor Patrick?
Thank you. Yes, look, part of mine was around the administrative burden for being able to identify those that are just within the common ownership. And the other consideration, and the reason I want to support this recommendation as it stands, is the potential cost, which is undefined at this stage, but if we were to go down a common ownership, I believe that the implications are greater from a revenue for the Shire perspective, which would subsequently result in potentially higher rates or expenses for other members of the community in order to meet the required revenue for the Shire. So I don't believe that it's fair necessarily for people with large land holdings or multiple land holdings that could be potentially eligible under the common ownership. that they receive the significant discounts that will go along with that at the cost of other everyday residential ratepayers. So I support it as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Mitchell?
May I propose an alternative motion, please?
Yes. You can foreshadow, sorry. You can foreshadow.
Oh, foreshadow.
Yeah. So if this, you have already spoken. Do you need to wait till right of reply? Yes, Councillor Davey.
Could we get some clarity from the CEO? Because the procedures that are provided to us show that a amended motion can be raised at any point through the
Are we looking at
proceeding.
an amended motion or an alternate?
Got it.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. So we will continue on, and the alternate motion comes up if this motion is unsuccessful. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Mitchell?
I am able to speak against, if I may. I'd like to speak against because, as we've heard in earlier debate around priority land, we have to really support our real farmers, the ones that really make the most of each acre of land. And it's the larger farmers that contribute. They have higher in costs. They are the ones that are there that with the heavy machinery, their pastures, etc., are developed. For example, someone asked me whether I was a farmer. I produce 4 calves a year. That would hardly keep you lot in meat. Whereas these professional farmers, they've got really good stock. They do it extremely well. And we've got so limited farmers now that are purely grazing. So they need larger acreages. I did state my impartiality, and I'm not talking about Mr. Fry in this state. I'm speaking of someone else. They make $50 per 5 acres of land. Professional farmers with good bookkeeping arrangements. One of my other people I touched base with prior to the agenda coming out, I might add, prior to the agenda coming out, they lost a significant amount of funds in this last financial year. We talked about the dry seasons. I bought hay in for 400, I sold 1 calf and bought 1 bale of hay in. It's tough, and it's going to remain tough. And these farmers are facing somewhere between 50 and 75% fertility rates. So their income's down this financial year. It'll take them a long time to get over this. So as much as are others going to pay more? So these multiple land use, common use farmers pay less? Yes, but they're already paying way more than they needed to what they draw out. There's still only 1 family. There's still only 1 family going to the waste facility. There's still only 1 family going to the recreation centre and the library, etc. So I urge you to not support this motion as option 1, however, to consider option 2 and support option 2. This is an extremely difficult for you, as I fully understand, because we've got no idea yet. We haven't done our budget. However, regardless, we need to support the people who remain in farming. I used to be a farmer. We went broke. No questions about that. So, and one of the reasons was the extremely high costs of production. So we need to do everything we can to keep those beef steaks on our barbecues and support our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Okay. Councillor Davey, right of reply.
Still thinking. I'm still thinking. So I think the recognition of there being a single family using the resources in the Shire is already there with the existing Landgate policy that says that if these 2 lots are next to each other and they're owned by the same people and they're used for the same purpose, they will qualify. They will qualify for that reduction. So the mechanism is already there for people who genuinely deserve it. And I don't doubt that there are a number of people in the Shire who've tried to undertake succession planning and allocate certain pockets of land to other members of the family as part of that succession planning, who should be regarded as in common ownership and farming for the same purposes. However, I still don't think it is the place of Shire staff to determine if they are farming for the same purposes as part of the same business unit. I feel like the Landgate should hold the responsibility for that, and it should be the responsibility of the farmers to ensure that those properties are in the same name. Oh, just torn.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. We'll put that motion to vote. Those in favour of the motion? And those against? That's carried. That was funny. Okay. Item 9.2.6, review of policy EXE CP7, organisational risk management. Would councillors like to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Patrick and Councillor Gubler. Councillor Patrick, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, not particularly, actually. Thanks.
Councillor Gubler, would you like to speak to the motion? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Davey?
So I both want to speak against the motion and foreshadow an alternate motion.
Thank you, Councillor Davey.
So I'm really happy to see Shire administration prioritising the development of a contemporary risk framework and working with LGIS to support this. However, insufficient notice of the meeting was given to enable a thorough and considered review of this important policy. And I've since raised issues with Shire administration and with the members of the ARMC regarding risk tolerance, acceptance criteria, consequence categories, controls rating, roles and responsibilities, and reporting. And I'd like to see the members of the ARMC discuss these issues further before endorsing this policy. So my foreshadowed motion will be around referring this back to the Audit and Risk Committee for further review.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Patrick? Right of reply.
No, I knew Councillor Davey was going to say something very intelligent in relation to it, and she has done so. So no, I don't have anything more to add, and know where I stand on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. We'll put that motion to vote. Those in favour? The original motion, not the foreshadowed motion. Those in favour? And those against? Defeated. Councillor Davey, would you like to put forward your motion?
My alternate motion is that policy CP6 be referred back to the Audit and Risk Management Committee for further review and consideration.
And would someone like to second that motion? Councillor Patrick? And Councillor Davey, would you like to speak to the motion?
I don't have anything additional to add.
Thank you. Councillor Patrick? Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Councillor Shand?
I was just going to say that Councillor Davey was eloquent once again and she put it in a nutshell, so thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Okay. Councillor Davey, right of reply? Okay. Votes for Councillor Davey's alternate motion. to defer the matter. In favour? Carried. Item 9.2.7, proposed redistribution of Western Australia into electoral divisions. Would councillors like to move this motion? Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Glover. Councillor Mitchell, would you like to speak to the motion?
Very much. Thank you for the officer that prepared this. I'm suspecting it was the Acting Director of Finance and Corporate. It was the proposal, the draft submission to go to the Electoral Commission absolutely sums up everything why this isn't relevant. We are not linked to Kalgoorlie, Laverton and everywhere else. We're a South West community and we need to be represented by a South West Member of Parliament. I think everything within that submission was extremely well. It touched on all the relevant points in a nice succinct manner, however it got everything through. So I ask that you support this motion and the submission goes off to the Electoral Commission, and one can only hope they'll listen.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Glover.
Yes, I totally agree with what Councillor Mitchell said, and I'd like to thank the officer who's prepared this application to advocate for our shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Would anyone else? Councillor Shand.
I agree with both, and I believe that we're supposed to be remain apolitical, and every time there's an election, these kind of things could occur. So I think we need to maintain our stance as a shire as to where those boundaries lay.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Mitchell, right of reply? We'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you, Acting Director of Finance and Corporate, for a very well prepared report. Item 9.2.8, Delegations Register Review. Would councillors like to move the motion? Councillor Mitchell, second. Councillor Patrick. Councillor Mitchell.
I can't pretend I read every single page in that in the attachments. However, I do appreciate very much the read so that I could actually see what I was looking at. So thank you very much. I think it's just bringing everything up to date and it doesn't change a whole lot of context. So yeah, as far as I can see, it's a straightforward item. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Look, yeah, much the same. It was really, it's a tidying up. There is nothing from what I can see, that would be seen to be contentious. So yeah, I'm supportive of it as it stands, but open to any other councillors' input in relation to that.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I would like to. I'm just noting that there was a review recommended for the Audit and Risk Management Committee for the powers, so we can do that through that process. Councillor Mitchell, right of reply? And we'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Councillor Bailey? Oh, sorry. Okay.
He was up and down before the rest of the room.
It's carried. Thank you. Item 9.2.9, update the HJ Jack Denning Funds, Deed of Indemnity and Release. Would councillors like to move the recommendation? Councillor Bailey and Councillor Glover. Councillor Bailey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Through the chair, no, it's all very clear. I understand there could have been a reason for it taking so long, but we're here now, so let's get it through.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Glover?
Yeah, I agree. This item or this particular fund has been carried over for many years now, and I'm really happy that it's actually come to a conclusion. It's come up in many, many meetings, and I am hopeful that Mr. Turia and Mr. Foles are satisfied with the outcome and that you are happy that it's all coming to an end now. Awesome. I'm so happy about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor
Yeah,
Goobler?
I think it's time that it's been wound up, and it's been a long time coming, so hopefully we're there today.
Thank you, Councillor Goobler. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Mitchell.
Just the same, it's good it's tidying it up, but I'm going to add Mr Ringe into the mix for thanking, so because he's part of the administrative of the trust. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to say I found out some interesting information with regard to item 9.1.1 that Jack Denning actually owned that property many years ago. So it's funny how it's all come together on the one night. Would anyone else like to speak to that motion? Okay. Councillor Bailey, right of reply?
No, thank you.
Thank you. We'll put that motion to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. I'm sorry, Mr. Turia, but we would be glad to hear your comments after the meeting is closed. We'll be glad to hear your comments after the meeting is closed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, people. Thank you so much. You're buying a bus to your logic.
Thank you. Item 10, elected member motions of which previous notice has been given. We have none. Item 11, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting. We have none. Item 12, meeting closed to the public. Would councillors like to move a motion to close the meeting to the public? Councillor Lindemann, Councillor Goobler. Those in favour? That's carried. I need to read out anything? What do I read out? Just this?
Just the recommendation.
Yep.
It's the motion, so what's in front of you?
This.
Yep.
Public reading of resolutions?
Yes.
Is everyone back that wants to be back? Council have approved bracket C, a contract entered into, or which may be, I haven't got one in front of me. Oh, here we go. That council requests the Chief Executive Officer to award the contract for RFT 04234, road sweeping and pit cleaning to Veolia Environmental Services Australia Proprietary Limited based on 1.1, their submitted price and rates, 1.2, the contract being for a period of 2 years, and 1.3, the Chief Executive Officer having the option to extend the contract by a further 1 year in accordance with the tender documentation, subject to the contractor achieving satisfactory performance throughout the term of the contract outlined in 1.2. And item 2, requests the Chief Executive Officer to publish this council decision in the minutes of the 26 June 2024 ordinary meeting of council. Thank you. Okay.
Through the chair,
Yes, Councillor Bailey.
we discussed, we're getting a fair bit of our Main Street missed. I mean, they do a good job on the stuff they can get to. But the CEO raised a good point. If they're there by 7 o'clock in the morning, there's no class. 7, 7:30, that you can't do the cleaning. I'm just wondering if we could ask them to see if they can make it a bit earlier sometimes, that's all.
Thank you. We can do that. Yep. So item 13. Oh, sorry, Councillor Goobler.
I just want to raise an issue with regards to appointing a CEO. Wouldn't we do that through this meeting?
No, not tonight. Not
You
at this meeting. Not at this meeting. Next one.
Oh,
A
the next
special
one.
council meeting. Yep.
Okay.
Item 13, meeting closure. The next agenda briefing session will be held on the 17th of July 2024 at 5 p.m. in the Shire of Donnybrook, Ballingup Council Chamber. Yes, Councillor.
It's not the last, the 17th, I thought was the next one, and the last week in July for the council. So the last week in July is the 31st, which means the 24th is the week before.
It's always third and fourth.
That's what I want through. I was wondering if third and fourth.
Third and fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, thank you. So we'll declare the meeting closed at 6:57 p.m.